News Channel 5 network and millions of conversations. This is one of millions of conversations.
Welcome to the Millions of Conversations show. I'm your host, Samar Ali, and with me today is a dear friend of mine, a fellow lawyer, Amy Wood. Welcome, Amy, to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. One of the reasons we started Millions of Conversations actually came from one of a few conversations I was having with dear friends and colleagues, including you, Amy.
Yes.
And do you want to tell us a little bit about what was, from your memory?
Yes.
That was why you encouraged us to do and to start Millions of Conversations, and why you thought it was needed for now.
Yes. When we were speaking, we were generalizing topics about struggles that we are currently seeing, and this was probably 2016.
Yes, before the election, actually.
Yes.
It was in the middle of the campaign going on, the campaigns.
And we were talking about several topics that were in the media, and we were really saying that it's hard to decipher what's real or what's truth, and that every side has a story. And a lot of times that truth is in the middle, but no one speaks to one another, and everyone just picks a side.
Right.
And if we could talk about it, maybe we could actually help solve that problem.
Yes, exactly.
And so, I mean, and that was over many different subjects.
Yes. So, do you remember that conversation too about where we were saying about voices versus conversations, and how what part of the issue is that there were millions of voices, but nobody was listening. And
Correct.
so that art of conversation had been lost.
Correct.
And we needed to start it. And do you remember how hard it was?
Yes.
And how it took several years, actually, for us to really sort of feel like it was beginning to hit its stride and it's in finding its sense of purpose.
Absolutely. We talked about things such as building trust.
Right.
And how to articulate conversation with someone without that conversation becoming adversarial or hostile, and really just being able, like you said, to have a conversation about different ideas.
Right. And why do you think that's important? Like, I know why I think it's important, but why do you, I always go back to the why. Whenever there's so much confusion and there's so much distrust, I always kind of just use the Atul Gawande principle, which he wrote in his book about checklists, and go back to the very basic question, which you have kids, I have kids, we know is the question that the 3-year-old will ask all the time, and that is why?
Correct. It's the why.
Why do we need the truth? Why do we need to actually have a conversation around truth?
I mean, I feel like truth can be very disarming when you actually go and discuss things, because the truth there is hard to find sometimes. And I think it takes a collective response to figure out what it really is. And so, like you said, having that conversation and seeing different viewpoints, I think helps people to maybe have some independent thought, which we're not encouraging people to do. Not then, and definitely not now.
Yeah, can you give me an example of a conversation that you've had where you were like, this helped me see things differently?
So, background. I'm from Memphis.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I'm from Memphis, and my dad was in law enforcement, was a career law enforcement officer. And
She must have seen a lot.
Seen a lot. I have very close ties to the African American community. So when Black Lives Matters happened, I felt a real identity with both parties, and having empathy and understanding that both things that were being said. There's
So you're talking about with law enforcement, because your dad was in law enforcement, and also
then being like,
and the Black Lives Matter movement.
Right. And so you feel like if there was maybe actual way to have the groups have a conversation and not be held to some terminology or a movement motto or slogan that then might be a miscommunication to a larger audience.
Right.
And so I feel like that's when things for me really were that communication.
Right.
I felt like that could really make a difference.
Right. And did you have some conversations around that time
Yes.
that helped provide that breakthrough, including for you?
Yes, I remember even talking to my father about it, which it was, it was very sad for him as well. Just feeling like I'm from a community that both in the African American community is underserved, and the law enforcement community that's also underserved. And seeing that with him and seeing how sad it made him to see where the country had gotten at that time.
Right. So for you as a lawyer, what made you decide to become a lawyer?
So historically,
I actually don't know the answer to that.
My dad, you know, his viewpoint of lawyers were always criminal defense lawyers, and it was funny. I had this bargain with him that's probably something that I wouldn't do, because in his mind at the time, was, you know, again, he worked so hard to make our cities safer, and he felt like at the time he would make comments about lawyers, and they weren't necessarily positive comments. But as time went on, he apologized and said, you know, lawyers have a very necessary place in our society and in our justice system. And then we got to that good place. I'd already enrolled in law school. It was an after the fact.
Where'd you go to law school again?
I went to University of Memphis, from Memphis,
Okay.
both undergrad and law school.
So you're Memphis born and raised.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But really seeing that lawyers try to solve problems, lawyers try to make people's lives better, and that's really
Most lawyers.
we hope we
try.
we hope the majority of lawyers that's what they're trying to do.
Right. Yeah, so if I can go back to something you said, and that's about law enforcement being underserved. Because one of the things I keep hearing around in Davidson County is that there's quite a big budget now for law enforcement. So do you feel that that's the case, or do you feel like I'm mistaken and my perception is off? Do you think that Davidson County is good, but maybe there's some other areas? Or do you think they're misunderstood?
I think funding is only one small piece
Tell me
of
more.
law enforcement. Proper training, and
I see what you
just,
mean.
I mean, there are
I see
essential
what you mean.
public servants, whether it's teachers, EMT, fire. There are fewer, and I may be wrong, but I believe there's fewer people that are willing to take those high risk jobs. So the training has to be really, really great to take these folks and make them, you know.
I hear that a lot about teachers as well. That the
Right.
training the continuous training that's needed, the resources aren't being placed there as much as they could be.
And these are critical jobs and sometimes dangerous jobs, whether it be education or, you know, fire, EMT, police. I think it's a sacrifice for those families.
I see.
For those professions. And so even though you have funding, you know, the cliche, you can't just throw money at it.
Right.
I think it's deeper than that.
Okay. See, now you're educating me, and that's what the power of this conversation. I mean, that's what I love about it. No, seriously, because I genuinely had that question. And now you've given me this new light of which to view it through. And, you know, I was doing an interview a year ago about Cop City. And while as I was preparing for the interview, I looked up the definition in the New England Dictionary as to how we define police. And do you know what the answer is?
No.
Officer of the peace. And for me, that just shifted so much for me of thinking about if we talked about police officers and law enforcement as officers of the peace. As you know, I identify very strongly with peacemaking.
Right.
What that would do for both the police themselves and for society that's being served by the officers of the peace.
Yes, it's like you said, and that's that definition, like you said, is certainly not what would come to my mind immediately, and certainly not what probably comes to mind in most communities.
Yeah,
it instills fear, not peace.
Right.
A lot of times, and again, I don't think that's one party's intent or response. I just think it's like you said, because there's just a big void there in that conversation, that community outreach between the officers, and just like, you know, I think it's great, for instance, when officers are at schools. Kids see officers and they see them in the school possibly as someone that helps keep them safe.
Right.
I mean, I feel like at that age, that's maybe what these officers are seen to be doing. But then as we get older in age, yes.
Yeah, I definitely think it depends. But but that's the goal.
Right.
That should be the goal for everybody. And I think that's what we're hoping, that for people to feel that sense of safety and to feel that, because safety, when people feel that they feel peace, I
Yes.
think, and that's where we're getting at with that.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Amy. We're going to be taking a break, and when we come back, we're going to be continuing this conversation with Amy Wood, a lawyer and entrepreneur and a dear friend who helped us start Millions of Conversations. Welcome back to the Millions of Conversations show. I'm your host, Samar and I'm having a conversation here with Amy Wood, who's an entrepreneur and a lawyer and a dear friend who helped us start Millions of Conversations, who saw a need for us to have conversations in order for us to become a healthier society that's focused around community and transcending divides. Amy, you were talking to us about your growing up in Memphis, and now, of course, you live here, but it sounds like your roots go really deep in Memphis. I always knew you were from Memphis, but I had forgotten that you went to UT Memphis as well.
Yes.
And I'd love to hear a little bit more about your community growing up and what community was like for you in Memphis. You shared a very tender story about growing up with a father who was in law enforcement, the FBI, if I'm not mistaken, and having that experience, but also having a lot of other experiences outside of the house. So what was community for you growing up, and what is community for you now?
Community for me growing up was truly colorblind because of probably my parents and the actual neighborhood that we lived in. You know, it was actually odd when I moved here because I was accustomed and actually very comfortable being a minority in settings.
Okay.
And then when I moved here, it was very different. And I moved here in 2002.
Okay, so to Nashville.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so even though they're only 3 hours away, they're vastly different cities with different problems. We were talking about law enforcement and things like that, and with media and I never felt in Memphis when I was there that I was asked to choose a side. I felt very engrossed in this community. I did a lot in hospitality. I felt like Memphis had great soul, great roots, and that when Memphis needed it, it would come together.
Yeah.
Again, I'm far removed from it now. But that's what it was like to grow up there.
Yeah, and when you say colorblind on that, I'm going to ask you this: is it? I mean, of course, you would see people's color, and you would know what that would. But it would mean what I'm hearing you say is that you didn't feel like it made you feel any different or less close.
Right. No, it not at all. And I went to a private school. That's when I first was somewhat introduced to, to race. But before that time, I didn't know any different at all.
Okay.
And so, and again, a lot of that I think comes from my parents and our surroundings, and again, their friends, our community, how we grew up.
So you weren't thinking anybody's better than or less than. It is, we're a community and we're in this together and we're working on this together.
Right.
And so do you see that in Nashville here today? Just in general, do you see us doing that? Or there's so many changes that have happened here. Do you feel like we're a community in Nashville, or do you feel like we've got a bunch of different communities, or do you feel like we're missing community?
I think we are missing community.
Okay.
I feel like there are pockets, and I love how Nashville is growing, whether it's people from other parts of the country or other parts of the world, even that are coming here.
Yeah.
I think groups such as Millions of Conversations is really helping those communities see one another and feel like they have a place. But I do think it's growing, and I do think it's becoming better because of business opportunities for different groups that are coming here. And I think there's interface there.
Right.
And I do think that is pushing matters forward.
Right.
But it just seems also, too, where it may vary county to county.
Yeah. Do you think we're becoming a transient city? Do you think that we're becoming a place that people come and stay for a couple of years and then they leave?
Professionally, I feel like we're a place where professionals are moving in hopes to stay. It's very welcoming to professionals and to businesses. I think it's less affordable, and sometimes, and at least in Davidson County, that may push some people out and push them into more rural areas or
Right.
cause them to leave.
Right.
But I feel like Nashville's becoming a big city.
So I'm going to ask a controversial question now.
Yeah.
And that is, do you think that people maybe they're better off in small towns? Do you think that some people are, we just, our last episode, we were talking about a small town and the community there and the love that's shown between the educators and the students themselves. Do you feel like maybe that needs to be the way forward? Or do you think it depends?
I think it depends. The principal was so great and he was so genuine and full of love. And I think you can get that big city or small town, right? But at the same time, the big city is more rushed, right? There's I feel like
So time
sometimes
moves
there's
differently.
yes, I think time moves differently.
So how do you think our city of Nashville should be engaging and interacting with smaller towns and even the counties around us?
So I did really enjoy the principal's idea of partnerships, especially within the business community, to show students, again, I gave examples of engineering or just basic business. Maybe there aren't engineering firms in a small town. Maybe there aren't those opportunities, and those kids are only reading about them or, like you said, seeing them on some kind of device to see what that really is.
Yeah.
And then, flip side,
Right.
maybe having some city kids
Yeah.
go and see what it's like
Right.
to be there in the country and maybe erode some of those stereotypes that city kids aren't accepted by rural kids.
Right.
And that, again, just like your organization, that interface
Right.
probably erodes some of that for the better, for
Well,
everyone.
that's the hope. That's definitely the hope. And I'm wondering too if you've given some thought to how we have these conversations online, because you have 2 kids.
Yes.
And it's, I would say, and I don't know if you agree with me or not, but it's virtually impossible to pretend that there's going to be absolutely no screen exposure and
Right.
that kids are going to grow up and they're not going to have any interaction online.
Oh, I agree.
So what's from your perspective, like?
So oddly enough, a conversation that I have with a lot of parents with similarly aged kids is the one thing that has come out of COVID that I think is positive are social media connectors that allow kids to stay connected. For instance, if you and I went to an elementary school together, but we went to separate middle schools, we're still able to interface
Right.
every day and keep a relationship. Now, the relationship is not what you and I deem probably a deep relationship
Right.
because it's over social media, but we're still connected. I feel like kids now can actually expand their networks easily without having to travel and to get exposure. And if we can maybe use that as a tool.
Healthy tool.
Right.
As a healthy tool.
As a
that
tool.
provides that access. Another question from a lawyer to a lawyer here. There's been a lot of, and I don't want to get political in this question. I'm fine if we want to get political on other things, but in this question specifically, I want to get to the mechanics. There's been a lot of changes, and I don't know if you're getting the same thing by everyday citizens and people who are asking about what all these changes that are happening in the legal system mean for society. How have you seen that?
Yes.
And what advice would you have, a general advice as a lawyer to everybody who's watching all of these fast changes that are happening as they're trying to think about their place in it all today? And like one of the things we had an event in Grundy County last night, and something that kept coming up for everybody is saying that they're confused as to what is law, what is not law, and where the safety nets are, and this fast-paced change is making people feel that they don't feel safe.
No, it's instability every day, and the questions we actually were at dinner with friends last night, and again, not a political conversation, just inquiry about whether it be the riots that are going on and what the state's rights
Right.
are versus federal options, and going through as a lawyer
Yeah.
and saying the purpose of the National Guard is, and what it's there for.
Well, and hold that thought, because
Yes.
we're going to come back to it
Okay.
right after the break. Welcome back to the Millions of Conversations show. I'm your host, Samar and I'm here with Amy Wood. Amy, you were just telling me about, as a lawyer, some of the advice that you're giving everyday people who are not lawyers, right. When they ask you about how do they keep up with all the changes that are happening.
It is difficult. What we're trying to focus on is just answer those questions and tell them what the law is, right. And then the mechanisms for appealing a decision, why it takes that period of time, and it's like a yo-yo,
yes.
what they're saying. And again, it's really hard, whether it's a business trying to navigate regulation,
right.
or anything that they're seeing in the news. But we're really trying to tell them currently,
right.
this is the law.
Right.
And it is difficult because right now...
And you can have a lot of opinions
yes.
and emotions around it, but our job as lawyers is to understand
right.
what the law is, even as it's changing, and that's
our
right. job.
That's right.
So shall we tell everybody
yes.
about the new series that
yes.
we're going to be launching
yes.
on YouTube with Millions of Conversations?
Yes.
So one thing that we got a lot of feedback from people. We're wanting to have continued conversations about a variety of different topics that felt relaxed and that they could see themselves having on their front porch. So Amy and I decided that we would start this YouTube series called Sweet Tea Chats, Conversations from the Front Porch. So our homework assignment on that is really to tune in, because we're going to be having a number of different people coming through and coming by the front porch, at a number of different front porches actually, to have conversations about the day, to have conversations like the one we were just having right now, where there will be sometimes agreements, sometimes disagreements, sometimes a change in perspective, and sometimes one where I'm going to have to think about that a little bit more before I make up my mind about how I feel about it. But we're excited about
yes.
it, and we invite you to tune in, and we also invite you to share your comments and your thoughts, because our goal here is to really try to build community through conversations that inspire action that flows through them. So thank you so much. Thank you, Amy, for continuing on this journey with us at Millions of Conversations, and we'll see you next time.